Welcome to the Plant-Centered and Thriving Podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Kitchens. Welcome back to the Plant-Centered and Thriving Podcast. My name is Ashley, and today I'm here with Caitlyn, who is going to share about her plant-based journey with you. Caitlyn lives in Texas, and she went plant-based after multiple family members were diagnosed with various cancers. Her brother was diagnosed with cancer in October of 2018 and passed away before Christmas. 2 months later, her uncle was diagnosed with cancer, and this made Caitlyn want answers. She watched a few plant-based documentaries, read some studies, read some books, followed some athletes online, and then she was hooked. And I'm sure some of you can relate to that. She learned that food really is her strongest medicine and that it's so vastly overlooked. Here's Caitlyn's story. Welcome to the show, Caitlyn.
Thanks. Thank you so much for having me. This is my first podcast interview. And Yay! I love listening to yours and other people's. And I think it's so fun when you bring two people together. So when I saw this opportunity, I was like, I would love to be on a podcast. I would love to be on your podcast. Yes, please sign me up.
Awesome.
I think they're so fun.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad you jumped at the opportunity. I'm so glad you're here. And also too, you have your own podcast, which is really awesome.
Yes, I do. We took a break over the holidays, but I'm hoping. I usually drop episodes on Tuesdays. So I'm hoping next Tuesday, which will be January something. Today's the 12th. So in 7 days, the 19th, maybe. I'm hoping that the Plant Your Health podcast will be back. We'll be back.
Nice. So Plant Your Health.
Yes. Plant Your Health.
Cool. All right. Yeah, definitely check that out. Okay. Well, the listener already knows sort of why you started your research when it came to plant-based eating, but right. I would love to hear in your own words, kind of taking us back to before things started happening, before 2018, when right. your curiosity started to peak and kind of what you came across when it came to going plant-based.
Lordy. So most of my family is from Wisconsin. So we would do reunions. We do family reunions I think we do them every year, but every other year we would go to Wisconsin. And then, the every other year they would come to Texas and whatnot. So It was always very meat centered. We ate a lot of cheese. My mom made brats. She boiled them in beer and threw them on the stove and all. And so it was just, I grew up very picky. I ate so much mac and cheese and chicken nuggets, but my stepdad growing up made the weirdest food. And I was terrified to try it. He was a one pot wonder, but not in the way that I made my delicious soup yesterday, but in is this even edible?
Oh dear.
Am I gonna die? What is it? And even my mom who made a bunch of stuff, she was always kind of concerned. And so there were plenty of nights that I would literally go to bed without eating dinner and would have my mom would bring me a peanut butter and jelly because I was so picky.
Yeah.
And I got better as I got older. I was always health conscious. I was always aware what I was eating. I played volleyball in middle school. So that led me to running in the off season, which led me to lifting weights. It got me in the gym in high school. And then I got into trail running and I did a powerlifting meet. And so I was always aware, I need protein, I need carbs, I need fat, but I never thought that eating meat wouldn't be a part of my meal. I had a friend, when I worked at the gym and she was vegetarian and I looked at her and I was like, what do you eat? I literally was clueless. It's I don't quite understand because I wasn't taught it.
Oh yeah. Yep.
We never had meals based around vegetables. We had it was meat was here and you have your veggies over here or whatever. And then you have some potatoes most people eat. That is how I grew up. So I had no thought process of that at all. Now that I've been plant-based for 2 years, I'm I never felt 100%, but I couldn't figure out why. I was just okay, I've got to be doing something wrong. You know what I mean? Either I'm overtraining or I'm not there's some secret something that I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And it was never, and it wasn't until I realized it was my food that I overhauled my eating that I was oh, this is a thing. This is how you feel more just alive and awake, and like you function better. And I didn't put two and two together until like 2018, when I was like, wait, what is happening?
Yeah.
What is going on?
Yes.
So yeah, I grew up super picky, Wisconsin. Cheese was everywhere, meat was everywhere. I'm a completely different person. Like, hello. Caitlyn 2.0. Like it's wild. And my mom is like, you eat what? And I'm like, yeah, yeah. Like I used to, when I would eat my eggs, I'm like, just don't put anything in them. Don't put anything in my eggs. I just want salt on top. And now if I have eggs, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna need some like broccoli in there, or some cauliflower, and throw some bell peppers, and then have like we have like beefless ground, and like throw some of that in there. You know, if I have eggs like once or twice a week, I'm like, I'm gonna need some filler, some stuff, you know? So
Yeah.
I've like done a total flip, and I'm like, wow, I live like that for some, but you don't know what you don't know. I feel like for me, I was so blocked from that like, even when my friend was like, yeah, I'm a vegetarian, I was like, oh, you're weird. You know, because I just wasn't like ready yet.
Yeah. And that's a good point. I think so many people can relate to this journey of being raised in a way where like meat was this like the centerpiece of your diet. And then you meet someone who's vegetarian. Because I completely remember meeting my first vegetarians and being like exactly what you said. What the heck do you eat? How do you survive?
Yeah.
How do you not eat meat?
Yeah. What? Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And then too, also what you said, which again, I think a lot of the listeners can relate to, is like, especially when you are plant-based, and especially when you kind of go towards health, or to go towards plant-based eating for like more health related reasons, there's that connection of like, holy smokes, I feel so much better now than I ever knew that I could. And because I know I was there, I'm sure, and you were obviously there. It's like, it's like you said, you really just don't know until you know, until you try it.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not like even so I mean, we'll get to this, but my husband, when we went plant-based, he like, I just asked him and he was like, yeah, sure. Okay. And I was like, oh, geez. Okay. Because he used to like, he was a taxidermist, and he used to like lead guides. So he was a guide for people for like hunting.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like,
I did not know that.
So he was like a big hunter, and like would just have like guys would hire him from the taxidermy place, and he would like lead them to like go and hunt and like all of this. And I'm like, okay, well, and he was like, yeah, sure, cool story. Let's go more plant-based.
Yeah.
Cool, babe. And I'm like, holy mackerel, I thought you were gonna throw a fit or like something. And even the guys at work now, he's been working overnight where he works forever. They're like, wait, you're vegetarian? What are you eating there? Like, even, you know, and he's like, dude, just try it for like a month. Try it for a month. He's always like, you don't even have to cut it out completely, but go from eating meat, you know, 2 to 3 times a day, like most people do, to maybe, you know, once or twice a week. Like anything counts. And he's like, just try it and see how you feel. I guarantee it. And they're like, oh no, I couldn't. I wouldn't. I'm like, you'd be fine. Because I say the same thing. You're fine. You're fine. Yeah. That's how we were raised, man.
It is. Yeah.
Crazy.
Yep. It is crazy. But it's true. It's like, if a taxidermist can do it, if I was raised on Angus cattle farm, you were raised in Wisconsin, like, it's like, you live in Texas now, like, it's amazing. Like, if we can do, like, anybody can do it. Like, it is very attainable, and it's attainable in a way, because I like the fact that everyone can define plant-based kind of in their own way, just like eating more plants in general, having a plant-centric diet. And I think that makes it also more attainable than you have to be 100% or incredibly strict or rigid, because then it's not fun. It's not enjoyable. You and I can't have a conversation about how much we love it.
Yeah, exactly. No, if you go and if you make it a big thing where like you stress about it all the time, then like you're not going to stick with it. You're going to be like, oh, that was too difficult. But if you're like, how can I make this meal? How can I make breakfast have a little more vegetables? So like, even when I do eat eggs, I'm like, okay, I'm going to need vegetables. Like, throw some bell peppers in there, throw some broccoli, whatever. And we saute it all together. And like, it's eating more vegetables than I was 10 years ago, 2 years ago, you know? And I always, you know, I do like to say, we get eggs from like, you know, range free on like Wall, Texas, out like a little town. And you literally see the little chickies, they run around. And so I'm like, one of my biggest things is I went plant-based for health, for, you know, everything. But I really like, the more you dig, the more you're like, oh, this is actually No,
Mm.
those little chickies, them cows, nope, I'm not gonna be a part of that. And
Mm-hmm.
so my husband still likes eggs. He'll still, but I'm like, okay, we're buying them. Like, ask your dad to get us some the next time they come into town. The little chickies run around, and I'm like, I don't like it. I don't like to do it all the time, but I'm like, I feel better about it. And so I think for me, it's like just the little tweaks here and there of how can I do better for myself, but also better
Mm.
for my like brain, because
Yeah.
I'm like, I need it to do good for me and to do good for like the animals and for others. And
Yeah.
so that's like one of my things is I'm like, I just want, like, how can I make this better for everyone
Mm-hmm.
and still like have my husband cook me breakfast, because sometimes I really like breakfast cooked for me, and like everything he comes up with has eggs, and I'm like, okay, babe, well,
Sure.
I'm like,
Yep.
okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like a just meeting in the middle.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and two, I think some of the listeners I know eat eggs, and some listeners wouldn't fathom ever eating an egg again. And I
Right,
think that I really like what you said of like you're really trying to do the best that you can for yourself and where you're living,
right,
and to like you said, not just for your health, but also for your brain, and you're making like conscious choices as well.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was one of the biggest things once I like went plant-based and like learned more. I was like, I know it's not feasible for me to go 100% vegan as much as I would like to, and maybe one day I'll get there.
Hmm.
I can do a whole heck of a lot right now where I'm at. And that any step towards that is better than being like, well, I can't do any of it, so I'm just going to eat meat and cheese all the time.
Right. Why do it at
And I
all?
think that's, yeah, and I think that's like the mentality that a lot of people have with like health and fitness too. Like, well, I can only go to the gym maybe once a week, so that doesn't seem like enough. I'm not going to go at all. And I'm like, wait. So you could go 52 times a year, or you could go zero. Well, 52 sounds better than zero. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yep. Hmm.
So I'm like, I try to just be like, just eat more vegetables, not
Yeah.
like 100%, just like add more to your plate, because naturally, when your plate has more vegetables, you eat less of other stuff.
Yeah.
Even if you do have chicken on there, if you have like half of your plate of like a mixed veggie medley or whatever, you're going to eat a smaller serving of chicken because you have other stuff on your plate that you need to eat.
Yes. Yep. If you're
Yeah.
listening and you're really resonating with Caitlyn's message, because maybe you've felt like you have to go 100% and you've sort of like just put up your hands because you can't or you don't want to, then hopefully what Caitlyn is saying is resonating with you and kind of encouraging you to just give it a shot and do the best that you can with what you have access to
Yeah.
or what's available.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, Brad, my husband, he'll eat a steak like once or twice a month. Like he eats really, really good most of the time. Like we cook a lot of our food at the house, all of that stuff. And even when he goes out to eat at work or whatever, he'll still get like plant-based stuff. Or if someone brings food in to work, he's like, here, you can have my chicken, and he'll eat the vegetables and the rice or whatever. I mean, it's so much better than what we were doing.
Yeah.
So I give him crap because I'm like, that cow didn't live a good life, but it's
Yes.
still better than what we were doing. And I'm like, okay, I'll take it. Like
Yeah.
I mean, you said overnight, yeah, let's go plant-based. I'm like, once or twice a month is better than every day, like some
Yeah.
people. So
Yeah.
I'm like, it's just a step forward.
Yeah.
And like, that's the goal, is
Yes.
just do something, anything. And you will feel the benefits, because even now he's like, oh yeah, like he feels so much better. And even like he'll eat a steak and he doesn't feel as bad as he did, because there for a long time he didn't, for like months and months and months. And then he ate it and I was like, I hope you feel like poop tomorrow. And he's like, I do. And I was like, hey. I'm like, it just proves my point, but
Yep.
whatever.
Yeah. Well, now here he is bragging to his buddies about, "Oh, just give it a try." It's
He
cool.
is.
And yeah.
Yep.
So I introduced you in the beginning and you started doing some research. Obviously, you started uncovering a lot of stuff, a lot of the benefits when it came to plant-based
Right.
eating. How did that trend, like any struggles that you came up against or anything that was particularly challenging?
So I came into like the thought of being plant-based when my brother was diagnosed with cancer in 2018. So I believe he turned 38 38 in the hospital, 37 or
Wow.
38, but I think 38 in October. His birthday is October, and he passed away before Christmas. And so it was like already so far along, and we didn't catch it in time. None of the treatments worked. And so that was a blow. Like he was
Yeah.
so young and like nothing was helping. And then fast forward to February of 2019, my uncle was diagnosed with cancer.
Yeah.
And it was like, wait, hold on. Like so Zarin, my brother, he was my half brother. So we have the same mom. My uncle was my uncle through marrying my mom's sister, so no blood relation. And so I was like, that's interesting. So it's not, like just because a lot of people are like, oh, it's just like pass through your genes. Like
Right.
you're gonna get it. That's just how life is gonna. And I'm like, that's weird, like two different backgrounds. Like my uncle was very wealthy. He had a landscaping company. Him and my aunt traveled all the time. My brother worked security in Dallas for like many, many years. So two different lifestyles, yet they had the same outcome. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's when my mind started like turning. I was like, what? Why? And I know people everywhere get cancer. Like it's a thing. It's
Yep.
become more of a thing, but like I had never lost a family member before.
Wow.
And so my uncle getting diagnosed in February, he passed away in June of that same year.
Yeah.
And just having like all of that at the same time, my cousin from Wisconsin had a colonoscopy and they found like the polyps and whatever, and they removed them. He's fine. My uncle Chuck actually had, I believe, prostate cancer, and he passed away in like August of 2019.
Wow.
And so all of this at one time, I was just like, what is going on?
Yeah.
Why? We, like we live in Texas, San Angelo, Dallas. My uncle Chuck lived in Colorado. My cousin lived in Wisconsin forever, and then he moved to Virginia Beach. And so I'm just like, what are we doing wrong here? What are we doing wrong? And so it was a lot. It was my last year of college. That was the year that I competed in my powerlifting competition. I graduated in September with my criminology degree. And so all of it at one, like my life just like flipped. Like I was so confused. So I started to research cancer. I learned about the blue zones. I started to look into the blue zones and kind of like, so all these things impact our body, and like how we live, what we eat is more impactful in some ways than like the genes that we get passed down. And like that was a huge thing for me. I was just like, wait, hold on. It just made so much sense. I started researching, the seed was already planted. I watched The Game Changers.
Yes.
Like so many other people everywhere. And that next day when my husband woke up in the kitchen, I was like, hey babe, what do you think about just going more plant-based? And he's like, yeah, okay. So I went plant-based overnight.
Wow. Which that's hard to do.
It just made so much sense.
Yeah.
My brain exploded. I had lost so many family members. I had, graduated. I started a new career. I started with TSA like the same month that I graduated college. And so like everything was already changing. And I was like, well, let's do it.
Why not?
And I was like, it made so much sense. It made so much sense. It was wild.
Yeah.
And when I went, so with TSA, you have to go for like 2.5 weeks to go to FLETC, the Federal Training Center.
Okay.
And it's like a cafeteria. And so there was one day for dinner that they had like no options. And so I had like a red meat sauce or whatever. And then I felt like ass. And I was like, nope, I think I'm good. Because it had been probably like a solid like 2 months of like not eating meat. Like we got it all out of the house. I was like, I'm not. You can eat whatever else we have. But yeah, like overnight I was like, and I think I'm done. This sums it up for me. I had already looked into it, and then I watched the documentary. I did my own research, and I was like, yep, okay, cool.
Yeah. It sounds like it was so aligned for you. It was like, why wait another day? Like, why not just do
Right.
this now?
Right. Honestly, looking back, I'm like, why did it take me so long? You
Mm,
know, I mean, I know why. I had no idea. I didn't know like the thought process behind it. But once I had like being an athlete my entire life, I once I watched the Game Changers and like, looked at the athletes and was like, wait. Like okay, yeah, I can do that. They can do that.
yes.
I can do that. That's how that
Yep.
works. Like I'm not competitive. I'm not like an Olympian. Like if they can function, then my just like regular trail running, small local powerlifting competitive, like I got this. I got
Yeah. Well, was there
this.
any, like, what were some of the first steps that you took, like for someone listening who is feeling that pull to go plant-based and maybe wants to just kind of just go for it, whether it's overnight or whether it's over the course of, I
Right.
mean, it took me 3 years. So whether it's over the course of a few years, what were maybe some of the first steps that you took that were helpful?
So our biggest steps that we took was cookbooks, looking up
Mm,
recipes. We have the Thug Kitchen
mhm.
cookbook, which cusses a lot. It's very attitudinal and I love it. I laugh
Yep.
every time I read their recipes, but I love it. And so um, we started with that. We got that. I think actually, I want to say Brad already had that cookbook, which
Oh,
is even more surprising. But so like we bought tofu and tried it. I tried tempeh and I was like, oh, it's nutty and delicious. And it's not
yes.
disgusting like chicken. Like sign me up. It was so great. And just honestly, like trying all the food plants that I was like too scared to try, just like overnight, I just became more willing to try more things. So really getting cookbooks and like looking up recipes on Pinterest of just like, plant-based breakfast, maybe using eggs, adding in, even vegetables if you decide not to take them out. Like that's still a huge step. It still bulks up your eggs and it's still better than nothing.
Mhm.
And so really just being willing to explore was huge for me when I first started. And I think it was because it just made sense in my head that I was like, I don't even care. Like, yeah, sure. Like we had like eggplant and like squash. I'd never tried squash in my life. I honestly didn't even like red bell peppers until I went plant-based. I don't know what's wrong with me
Yeah.
because we're so conditioned to like grill some chicken. Oh, we'll make some rice, we need some carbs. And then, oh, we should definitely have a vegetable. It's probably like what our mother would tell us. So we'll have
Yep.
some, like this little thing of green beans over here. We'll have that. And so when you take most of the plate of what people are used to eating, like, so what do I do? So cookbooks and recipes were so useful,
Yeah.
so useful.
Yep.
And you just come up with like so many options. Like we've done in the Thug Kitchen, they have I think they're black beans, sweet potato, and something. They're like 3 or 4 ingredients in the name of these enchiladas.
Ooh.
And we have tried them how the recipe said. Once we got comfortable, we made it a few times for the recipe. We're like, okay, well, let's try it with this. And then let's add some of that. And then, oh, it's like shredded zucchini. And we've done it with like shredded squash. And so you kind of figure out what you like and then you just, add the variety by adding other vegetables basically is like the same dish.
Hmm. So, because I know a lot of people can relate to the fact of like going plant-based, you typically eat a lot more foods or different foods than what you're used to, what we're used to when
Hmm.
we like growing up. And for
Yeah.
you, it was like tenfold because you were so picky as a child.
Yep.
And now it's like once you started, from what it sounds like, trying a new food, that opened the door to trying another new food, which is just like,
Hmm.
heck, I'm just gonna
Yeah.
keep on going.
Like I said, like my brain just exploded and it made so much sense. But my biggest struggle, I would say, when I first went plant-based was like having the accessibility and like the ease of it. Like
Yeah.
when I went to Futzy, I didn't have a lot of options. I went to Austin in January after that to do training, and I was in Austin. It's a bigger city. It has more options. I found stuff at like the HEB in
Hmm.
Austin that we don't have at my HEB. And so that made a difference. But even now, like in my town, I don't live in a big city. We don't have like a Whole Foods. We don't have, I mean, our like plant-based vegan section has grown in the last 2 years, but just the ease of being like, oh, I'm hungry. Like, I mean, it's a choice I made, obviously. We cook like 95% of our food. And if we do go out, I like going out to eat. I think it's fun. It's an experience. Most people like going out to eat, but it's not like a normal thing for us, like all the time.
Yeah.
And that is simply, I mean, it's probably good for us, don't get me wrong, but it's just like we're limited on the like restaurants we go to and enjoy. And it's frustrating that it's not as easy
Yeah.
as it is. And I think that's why so many people don't do it, or they don't even like toy with the idea,
Yeah.
because it does take work. Like I'm supposed to be going to my brother's fiance's bachelorette party in June, and it's like an extra step. It's like, okay, what am I going to eat? Like, I'm probably going to have to go to
Yeah.
the grocery store and either take my food or go while I'm there. And it's an extra step I chose. Like, I chose it and I'm going to do it. I do it all the time. But it's still like that extra thought process. It's having that ability to just like plan ahead a little bit,
Yeah.
because you won't always have like the best options. Now it's not really like a struggle, but it's just an extra step. It's just an
Yep.
extra step. You have to plan. Just, I mean, like anything else to be successful, you just might take that extra little bit of time to kind of figure out, okay, how am I going to make this work? Because I've decided that this is what I want to do.
Right. Yep. Yes, it's becoming more and more accessible, which is awesome. Like more and more
Yeah.
products and more restaurants and grocery stores are catering to this demand. But at the same time, when we zoom out, it's like, well, there's still some frustrating components to it. Like it's still not
Yeah.
completely accessible for anyone and everyone to do
Hmm.
this kind of seamlessly.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think that's why I had so much resistance to it. Once I learned about it, did the research, and was like, oh, okay, like this is a decision I'm going to make and I'm going to figure it out. I made the decision all on my own. Like, I didn't have someone saying, you should do this, you should do this, you should do this. Like,
Yeah.
the thought came from my own head. I did my own research and I decided for myself that this is the best route for me. And if someone else is also thinking this, I am more than happy to like share that, just like Brad. Like, none
Hmm.
of his, like, they'll probably never even try it. But if they ever do, they know that they can be like, Brad, how did you do this? Like,
Yeah.
what, but and it's a lot of it is just like planting the seed and having them like see him perform so much better in his workouts than like they are. And it's not solely because he's plant-based, but nutrition has a lot to do with everything. Like,
Yeah.
it
Yes.
just does. I know you talk about it all the time with like finding your why. And I'm
Hmm.
like, I have found my why and I am stuck in my why like concrete.
You're not
And
going
I'm just
anywhere.
standing here. Yeah, no.
Yep.
So yeah, like plant-based really opened my eyes to eating. Like, that's one of like my biggest things is like, I never, like, I mean, everyone loves food, don't get me wrong, duh, but I never appreciated it until I
Yeah.
went plant-based. And
Yeah.
I hated cooking because I hated cooking meat, and so now like I love cooking. And I've probably tried more new things in the last 2 years than I did in like the 26 before. Like,
Wow.
and that's just like how it happened.
It's a beautiful thing. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story and sharing your why with us. And also too, having, in my opinion, just such an approachable approach to plant-based eating. Cause I think
Yeah.
that's really helpful for people listening who are trying, but maybe they feel stuck or not like 100% confident in their approach. So hearing from someone like yourself with your story, I think is really helpful for others as well. So I really appreciate you coming on and sharing.
Thanks. I appreciate you having me. I think for anyone listening, it is really just do what you can now with what you have. Like, if you're in a small town like me, like, there's options, try something new, get a cookbook. We kind of fell into a rut. Like, Brad and I both got like super busy. We got into a rut where like we really weren't cooking, and what we were cooking was like stuff that we had been eating forever, so not a lot of variety. And so we ordered like HelloFresh for like a month of like their plant-based recipes. And so, just like with every other recipe, we, made theirs, and then we've kind of like branched off and like edited it and made our own. And so now we have like, 2 to 4 of like every recipe that they've given us. And it just kind of brought us back into like experimenting, which I think is a huge thing, because I didn't do that for my life, and now I really like it.
Yes. Heck yes.
So
I think that's so cool.
It's just one step at a time of like, like if you can only go to the gym once a week, 52 is better than 0.
Yeah.
Is my thought process.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
So
well, good. Well, if people want to reach out to you or connect with you, where is the best place for them to do that?
So the best place would probably be on Instagram. I'm on Instagram at the Caitlyn Howarth. So that is like Howard, but with a lisp. So like no D and a TH. Like
Nice.
Howard, but with a lisp.
Yes, I love that.
Brad and I always say it, because people are like, you what? I'm like, yeah. So at the Caitlyn Howarth, and then my website, if you're interested in strength coaching, running coaching, eating more vegetables, then you can check out my website at CaitlynHowarthFitness.com. And then I also have my podcast, which was mentioned, the Plant Your Health podcast.
Awesome.
And those are pretty much all the places that I'm at.
Perfect. We linked all those below in the show notes. So if you want to go check out Caitlyn, her website, Instagram, all the above, definitely go do that. You can use the links below to navigate to those.
Yes.
Awesome.
And then DM me if you listen to this. DM me if you're listening and you have any questions, or just like send me a wave and say hello, because I would love to connect with others. And I love answering questions. I love talking about eating more plants and going plant-based and doing what you can. So definitely reach out to me.
Yes, definitely do that. I think it's so fun to be able to connect with people online, especially on Instagram. All right, we'll go check Caitlyn out. And yeah, Caitlyn, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Until next time, keep thriving.